kingdom building.
If you come against the scriptures, man, we gon' rise up. If you come against our heritage, we gon' rise up. It don't matter if I get it, man, we gon' rise up, rise up. We rise up. If you come against the king, man, we gon' rise up. If you come against our Elohim, we gon' rise up. It don't matter if I get it, man, we gon' rise up, we rise up. Rise up and rise up.
Deuteronomy chapter 30. And it shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations, whither Yahuwah thy Elohim hath driven thee, and shalt return unto Yahuwah thy Elohim, and shalt obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children, with all thine heart and with all thy soul, that then Yahuwah thy Elohim will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations whither Yahuwah thy Elohim has scattered thee. Verse 4. If any of thine be driven out unto the outmost parts of heaven, from thence will Yahuwah thy Elohim gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. And Yahuwah thy Elohim will bring thee into the land which thy fathers possessed, and thou shalt possess it, and he will do thee good, and multiply thee above thy fathers. And Yahuwah thy Elohim will circumcise thine heart and the heart of thy seed, to love Yahuwah thy Elohim with all thine heart and with all thy soul, that thou mayest live. And Yahuwah thy Elohim will put all these curses upon thy enemies, and on them that hate thee, which persecute thee. Verse 8. And thou shalt return and obey the voice of Yahuwah, and do all his commandments which I command thee this day. And Yahuwah thy Elohim will make thee plenteous in every work of thy hand, in the fruit of thy body, in the fruit of thy cattle, and in the fruit of thy land for good. For Yahuwah will again rejoice over thee for good, as he rejoiced over thy fathers, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of Yahuwah thy Elohim, to keep his commandments and his statutes, which are written in this book of the law. And if thou turn unto Yahuwah thy Elohim with all thine heart and with all thy soul, for this commandment which I command thee this day is not hidden from thee, neither is it far off. It is not in heaven, that thou shouldest say, who shall go up for us to heaven and bring it unto us, that we may hear it and do it. Verse 13. Neither is it beyond the sea, that thou shouldest say, who shall go over the sea for us and bring it unto us, that we may hear it and do it. But the word is very nigh unto thee, in thy mouth and in thy heart, that thou mayest do it. Verse 15. See, I have set before thee this day life and good, and death and evil, and that I command thee this day to love Yahuwah thy Elohim, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments and his statutes, his judgments, that thou mayest live and multiply. And Yahuwah thy Elohim shall bless thee in the land whither thou goest to possess it. But if thine heart turn away, so that thou wilt not hear, but shall be drawn away, and worship other gods, and serve them, I denounce unto you this day, that you shall surely perish, and that you shall not prolong your days upon the land, whether thou passes over Jordan to go to possess it. I'll call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live, that thou mayest love Yahuwah thy Elohim, that thou mayest obey his voice, and that thou mayest cleave unto him. For he is thy life, and the length of thy days, that thou mayest dwell in the land which Yahuwah sware unto thy fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give them.
Hallelujah. To the Most High for the reading of His Word. We're going to go ahead and move forward with the Shema.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
How y'all doing today? That's good. It's the Shabbat. Yes. Well, you see, we got some friends joining us today. So shout out to the youth. Hallelujah. Go ahead. Come on, put your hands together. all the time at Rebirth ATL. And sometimes we like, well, we're gonna rock with that a couple times. So this is a song that my family and I made up. Very simple, very, very simple. So I'll sing the first round of it, and then y'all will join in. We don't have a name for it yet, so just roll this.
Make a joyful noise unto the Lord. circumcision. Just like we went in Deuteronomy chapter 30 just a minute ago for the Torah portion. Just the circumcision of our hearts on today. If Most High can just open up our eyes of our heart to get all the grimy things that is not like Him out of us on today, so that we may be able to serve Him better. We may be able to worship Him in spirit and in truth on today. Hallelujah. So we just gonna sing this song. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Open the eyes of my heart, God.
we give you praise, honor, and glory, Father, because we are here yet again. You have allowed us to open our eyes and have the ability to come together to worship you, to go over your glorious word, Father, your precious Torah. Father, we exalt you this morning in the name of your Son, Yahushua HaMashiach. Father, cleanse our minds, our hearts, our spirits, Father. Create in us a clean heart, O Yah, and renew a right spirit within us, so that we may worship you in spirit and in truth. Father, we offer up the fruit of our lips, Father, in praise, in adoration to you, King of kings, God of gods. There is none like you on earth or in heaven, Most High Yah. You are the Most High Yahuwah. So as we come before you corporately, as a family, as a community, Father, we ask that you dwell with us and that you allow your spirit to rest upon us. Inhabit the praises of your people, Most High Yah. So that as we go over the scriptures, Father, that our ancestors wrote under the inspiration of your spirit, Father, that we may have understanding, that you open the eyes of our soul so that we will read the word and we may understand, that we may hear and adhere to it. Most High Yah, we praise you, we thank you for this day and this season, and we pray for our brothers and sisters scattered across the world, that you will send them people after your own heart, who may speak to them and wake them up to the covenant that you made with our ancestors, Father, and that all nations shall come and cleave unto the house of Israel, so that everyone who has a heart for you will not be blotted out of your kingdom, Most High Yah, but that we are supposed to be a light to the nations. And Father, we ask that you flip the switch so that our light may shine brightly and permeate from the depths of our soul into the world. More of you, less of me. As we go over your word, we ask that someone may gain something, that someone will get some understanding that they didn't have before, so that they may walk in a more pure direction towards you. In the name of your Son, Yahushua HaMashiach, we pray. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Few quick announcements while everyone's going back to their seats. For anyone who's not going to be able to go to Passover, because this registration is closed, if you plan on attending one here locally, please stay a little longer after the lesson is over. We're going to have our sister Akeya, who's going to gather with those who are interested in a local Shabbat, a local Passover. So please stay, meet with her so you can get the details, so that the game plan can begin to be developed on the when, the where's, the why's, the how's, and stuff like that. So next Shabbat, the Augusta Assembly, the Moreh Morris, they will be coming here. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. And I believe the new assembly, if they can make it, is supposed to be coming. A new one that's being formulated in Columbia, South Carolina. So they will be in attendance with us next week. All right? Okay, so we're going to wrap this lesson up today. We're going to wrap this up today. Which laws do we keep? And some of these laws, we know we're supposed to keep them, but are we keeping them correctly? Some of the things that we're going to go over today, some of our brothers and sisters have used against each other to, you know, sometimes we have people who's a little overzealous and would like to beat people with scriptures out of context and stuff like that. So we're going to go over a couple things. I'll make sure that we know we're supposed to be keeping these laws, statutes, and commandments, but are we keeping them appropriately? Do we understand the full context of what's being conveyed through the text? Hallelujah. All right, so we're going to jump right into this. We all know we're not supposed to commit adultery, right?
Correct.
All right. I don't think I have to let anyone know there's anything different, right? You know, like that still is in effect. We're not supposed to be committing adultery. But what is adultery? There's two types of adultery in the text. Do we know what they are? He says spiritual and physical. What will be an example of, it's very easy, of physical adultery? Sleeping with another man's wife. Point blank period, right? That's laid out in the text. Now, what would be an example of spiritual adultery? He said worshiping other gods. What? Same thing? Okay. Here's the text. Deuteronomy 22:22. If a man is found lying with the wife of who?
Another man.
Both of them shall die. The man who lay with them, the man who lay with the woman and the woman. So when we go to the book of John, and we see in chapter 8, when they brought the woman who was caught in the act of adultery, what did they do wrong there?
Where's the man?
Where's the man? The motive behind what they did was laid out when the text first started. They wanted to trap him. They wanted to test him, right? So one thing they did, they brought the woman. If she was caught in the act, then that means you saw the man as well. So that was one thing that they did wrong. So they were actually breaking the law right there, trying to get someone put to death without proper justice. So Jeremiah 3:6-9, Yahuwah said to me in the days of King Josiah, have you seen what she did? That faithless one, Israel, how she went up on every high hill and under every green tree and played the whore. And I thought, after she had done all this, she will return to me, but she did not return. And her treacherous sister Judah saw it. She saw that for all the adulteries of that faithless one Israel, I sent her away with a decree of what? Yet her treacherous sister Judah did not fear. But she too went and played the whore. Because she took her whoredom lightly, she polluted the land, committing adultery with what? So did they actually sleep with a stone or a tree? It's a spiritual form of adultery. This is one of the ones, right. This is one of the ones that's easy. We all know that we're not supposed to commit adultery, spiritual or physical. All right. So we're going to go ahead and go to the next one. Exodus 20:16. Can I have someone loudly read that?
You shall not bear false witness.
That's right. Say it with your chest. Say it again, remember.
You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor.
You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Leviticus 19:11. Read that for me, brother.
You shall not steal. You shall not deal falsely. You shall not lie with one another. Lie to one another.
Let me just say this real quick. You kind of stole that from him right there.
Oh, I thought he passed the rock.
See, you just violated that commandment right there. I said my brother, and you just kind of stole the show right there. But no, that's good though. That's good. So, what's the difference between these two right here? Okay, I see blank faces. In the Ten Commandments, what does it mean by thou shalt not bear false witness? You gotta come up, brother. Anybody gonna be able to hear you?
Okay, so by the mouth of two or more witnesses, life or death. So when you're bearing false witness against your neighbor, you are testifying at pains of death against a fellow Israel.
Okay. So with that being said, is that the same as Leviticus 19:11?
No.
Is it? Is it not?
The principle is the same, but that may not be a death sentence.
See, the brother is right. See, when it says you should not bear false witness, okay. All right, let me give you an example. My brother, I dropped that. Pick it up for me. Hey, Frank, you see my clicker? No, just say no. Just saying, like we're acting right now. So you say no. No, you haven't seen it? You want to help me find it? So he searches, he helped me find it the whole time he got it in his pocket. Right? He's lying to me. He's deceiving me. That is not bearing false witness. Now, this is what you do. Brother Frank, have you seen my clicker? And you say, Alton picked it up. Go ahead and say that.
Alton picked it up.
Word. And so I go to Alton like he don't have it. We end up having to go to some type of trial because he's saying that he stole my stuff. We go to a trial and you testify. You understand. Raise your hand real quick. All right, put it back down. And now he's testifying that Alton stole my stuff. He is now bearing false witness. It is for lack of a better term, it's like the way our judicial system's supposed to work, right? When you go to court and you testify, that's bearing false witness. It is not the same as lying, although you are lying. You are lying, but in the text, this is not what it's talking. It's not specifically talking about lying. How do we know? Thank you, brother. Should have been like, I ain't got it. How do we know this? Because there's two different judgments for each. So when you look at Deuteronomy 19, 16 through 21, you have a case of someone bearing false witness. This is what's supposed to happen when someone bears false witness. If a malicious witness arises to accuse a person of wrongdoing, he accused Alton of wrongdoing, then both parties to the dispute shall appear before Yahuwah, before the priest and the judges who are in office in those days. The judges shall inquire diligently, and if the witness is a false witness, and has accused his brother, what? Falsely, then you should do to him as he meant to do to his brother. So, we move on. So you shall purge the evil from your midst, and the rest shall hear and fear, and shall never again commit any such evil among you. You hear the tone in this. He's serious. And never again commit any such evil among you. Your eyes shall not pity, it shall be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. But then when you go to a case of lying, just strictly lying or deceiving, misleading, Leviticus 6, 2 through 5, if anyone sins and commits a breach of faith against Yahuwah by what? Deceiving his neighbor in a matter of deposit or security or through robbery, or if he has oppressed his neighbor, or what is that? What does that next sentence say?
That's found something lost on something lost and lied about.
You see? You see that, Frank? You see what you did? Found something lost and lied about it, swearing falsely. And any of these things that people do in sin, thereby, if he has sinned and realized his guilt and will restore what he took by robbery or what he got by oppression or the deposit that was committed to him or the lost thing that he found or anything which he has sworn falsely, he shall restore in full and shall add a fifth to it and give it to him who it belongs on the day he realizes his guilt. There's two different judgments for just lying and deceiving versus bearing false witness. They are both lying, but one of them is a more serious offense. All right? Does that make sense? Okay, so we know we're not supposed to be lying and stuff like that anyway, but when we look at the text, let's make sure we understand what it means by bearing false witness. That's lying, basically, like, I won't say, under oath, like in a trial, to get someone, to have some judgment enforced against someone else. Okay. Has anyone ever heard of this? This type of, I'm sorry.
No, I have a question regarding bearing false witness.
Okay.
Does gossiping fall in that category?
No.
It doesn't. So, like, if you're sitting here, you know, well, no one knows it's a rumor. Somebody might have started a rumor, but then a whole bunch of people are spreading it. The people spreading it wouldn't be considered doing wrong?
No, it's wrong, because that's also condemned in the text. But it's not considered bearing false witness. Bearing false witness is something specific. And it is basically, always think of bearing false witness in a matter of court, a matter of a trial type of situation. Yes, you're not supposed to slander. I forgot what scripture that is. But that's also in the text as well. You're not supposed to be slandering. You're not supposed to be gossiping. In Proverbs, the Most High says he hates a lying tongue. Right? But when we look at bearing false witness, those are two different things, all right? Does that answer your question? All right. Deuteronomy 25, 5 through 6. Look, don't let these men here in America fool you, thinking that some of these things y'all gotta listen to. Like, yo, you gotta watch them. Some of them are some little sly foxes. Deuteronomy 25, 5 through 6. If brothers dwell together and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the dead man shall not be married outside the family to a stranger. What does that mean according to this context? What does that family mean? Say it again. The brother is supposed to go in her. She's not supposed to go outside the family, but what does the term family in this context mean? She said tribe. Okay, anybody got something else?
I say immediate family.
He said immediate family. So give an example of immediate family.
I say like the inheritance rights, like the brother or uncle, or or uncle's son, like of that nature. Just like example of be like David and Ruth. You understand? So he went to him. He was like, look, such and such wife, trying to be married. And he was like, well, I have to go through this man and that man before I can accept it. So that's what I mean.
Gotcha, okay. So, she said tribe, he said immediate family. Both of you are right. His is more accurate because when it's talking about family, let's say there's three brothers. There's three brothers. And then a woman is married to one of those three brothers. When they're saying outside the family, she's not supposed to marry anyone else. She's supposed that the next brother is supposed to be the one to go in her. If she doesn't have children, that's also the stipulation.
If he's not married.
Oh, yes. But it actually doesn't say that. It actually doesn't say that. Her husband's brother shall go into her and take her as his wife and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. And the first son whom she bears shall succeed to the name of his dead brother, that his name may not be blotted out of Israel. So let me ask you all this question. Is that something that we can keep today? You say no. Why? Huh? He said we're not in the land. You say what? She said people ain't playing that today.
I would say that you can decide that that's what you want to do. However, because of the culture that we come up in, most people aren't willing to submit to, because that goes back to Genesis 38 with Judah's sons. Judah's sons did it before we got into the land. So we can't just say strictly the land is the reason not to do it.
The land is not a reason to say that you can't do it. I completely agree. but this is not something that we can keep today. Say that what? She said it's illegal where we live. Not necessarily, because the husband is dead.
Right. But they could marry the brother.
Well, that's not even in the text. Yeah, that's not even in the text. So that was just something I was brought up. So according to this example in the text, the husband is dead, so it wouldn't even be illegal here. But there's other reasons. If you look at what we're talking about in the text, remember we just identified what it meant by family, right? We're talking about immediate family. So, as he said, you can, but most people aren't really willing to submit to that. For one, you would need a true community environment, right? Where you're living amongst each other. You would need family. You would need a lot more things in place to make this happen. So, we don't know what tribe we're from. That's one of the biggest things that could be a hindrance in that. So just because I say he is my Aki, that he's my brother, does not necessarily mean that if I die that he can go into my wife. We're not immediate family. We don't know what tribes, right? But as he said, if you have a community that's together, if you have these things together, and everyone is on the same page, and you actually have immediate, then I guess it wouldn't, at that point, it probably wouldn't matter if you knew your tribe, because if there was 2, 3 real brothers, then you know that whatever tribe they're from the same tribe, right? The woman may not know what tribe she's from, so now you got those gray areas I'm talking about, but don't let nobody try to trick you into that, y'all ladies. Y'all watch out, be careful. So y'all know. Okay, in the land. This is one of the, when people try to question us about why we don't keep certain laws and stuff like this, this is one of the biggest things that we say. Is this completely accurate? We're not in the land, we're not in the land, we're not in the land. Is that accurate? Yes, no, sometimes, every now and then. He said sometimes? Okay, let me ask you this. Known as the land of Canaan and eventually occupied by Israel, who owned the land?
That land was originally allotted at Shem, right?
You said who?
Shem.
You said Shem. You said who? All right, remember, I said think carefully up there. My sister over here asked it. It belonged to the Most High. I'm not just saying that, it's in the text. I'm not just saying that, it's in the text. Leviticus 25:23. And the land shall not be sold in perpetuity, for the land is whose?
Mine.
For you are strangers and sojourners with me. 1 Chronicles 29:15. For we are strangers before who? You. Speaking to the Most High. As sojourners, as our fathers were. Our days on the earth are like a shadow and there is no abiding. So, what did the Canaanites do to the land? He said corrupted, defiled it. What happened to the Canaanites? They got put out. Can you get put out? If you own something, can you get put out of what you own? What did Israel do to the land?
We defiled it.
We defiled it? What happened to Israel? Where are we right now? Okay. I'm going somewhere with this. Leviticus 18:24-30. Do not make yourselves unclean, and we're going to get into the whole unclean thing. Do not make yourself unclean by any of these things. The preceding things that they're talking about, they were talking about all of the abominations of the nations that were around them. All the things that the Most High hates. For by all these, the nations I am driving out before you have become what? Unclean. And the land became what? So I punished its iniquity, and the land did what? Vomited out its inhabitants. But you shall keep my statutes and my rules, and do none of these abominations, either the native or the stranger who sojourns among you. For the people of the land who were before you did all of these abominations, so the land became what?
Unclean.
Lest the land vomit you out when you make it unclean, as I vomit out the nation that was before you. We're going to keep going because we're about to get into this whole unclean concept in the land and out the land. You shall therefore keep all my statutes and my rules and do them, that the land where I am bringing you to live may not vomit you out. And you shall walk in the and you shall not walk in the custom of the nations that I am driving out before you, for they did all of these things, and therefore I detested them. Y'all can write that down and finish reviewing that later. That's Leviticus 20, 22 through 25. Jeremiah 2 and 7. And I brought you into a plentiful land to enjoy its fruits and its good things. But when you came in, you defiled what? My land and my heritage, and made my heritage an abomination. What are some laws that can only be carried out in the land?
Somebody said stone.
7-year rest of the land.
He said the land Sabbath. Anything else? She said, say that again. She said eating clean. Tithing. Anything else? Keeping the feast. Anything else?
Animal sacrificial laws.
The animal sacrificial laws. Anybody got anything else? What else you can only carry out in the land?
Pilgrimage to Aliyah. Pilgrimage to the temple.
He said the pilgrimage to the temple. All right, so let's do something. If it involves the following rituals, do we do rituals in Israel? One person said yes. Do we do rituals in Israel? No. Okay, so got a couple people say yes. Somebody said no. I will. I will. Inheritance, priest, land, capital punishment, judgments. It either can't be done or can't be done in its entirety. So the brother said tithing. Brother said tithing. Do we tithe? No. Why? He said yes. You tithe. Okay. Did anybody else say no? You say no. Okay. We got, okay, more hands say no than yes. Okay, who's the tithe for?
The priest. It's agricultural to the priest.
She said it's agricultural to the priest. Said the Levites. What you got, brother?
It is every third year, it is to the poor. Every third year, it is to the temple. Every third year, it is to the Levites who live among you. So it's not specifically to any group year after year. So do we do that? Probably not.
Well, technically, if you say that every third year is for XYZ, and you say it's not specifically from year to year, then those other 2 years, then it has to be to someone specific.
Right.
Right. So, no, we do not tithe. And let's go through the reason why we do not tithe. Who is the tithe for? Now, he's right when he says it's for the sojourner, for the widow, the father. He's right in that. That's not the only people that the tithe was for. Why were they given the tithe, the Levites?
They didn't have inheritance.
They didn't have
land.
See, look at that. You see how many of y'all answered that question? Y'all like keeping y'all money in y'all pockets, huh? I got the most feedback on that one. Okay, one more time. Why were they given the tithe? They had no inheritance? Okay. It was to provide them with what? Somebody said food? A couple people say food? Say what?
They
She said clothing. Anything else?
They also had to make sacrifices for themselves before they actually made sacrifice for the people. So they had to have something to sacrifice.
Okay. He said they had to make sacrifices for themselves before they made sacrifices for the people. So they had to have something to sacrifice. So you're saying that's where the tithing stuff came into play as well. Who collected the tithe and where was the tithe taken to?
Storehouse.
Take it to the temple.
It was taken to the temple. Who collected it? Who did they give? Who did the people give the tithe to? Okay. So, who in here is a Levitical priest? Make sure I say that. Does this mean that you're not supposed to give? No. But the conditions for biblical tithing is not here. We all know that because most of us, my brother tithe. Most of us don't tithe because the situations for biblical tithing are not in place. Who was the tithe for? The Levites. Why were they given the tithe? They didn't have inheritance. It was provided to them for what? To eat, so that they could survive. Everybody else had land, so they would grow their own food. But the Levites were the Most High's inheritance, so they were not given that land. Numbers 18:21. To the Levites I have given every tithe in Israel for an inheritance, in return for their service that they do, their service in the tent of meeting. For the tithe, Numbers 18:24, for the tithe of the people of Israel, which they present as a contribution to Yahuwah, I have given to the Levites for inheritance. Therefore I have said of them that they shall have no inheritance among the people of Israel. Deuteronomy 14:23. And before Yahuwah your Elohim, in the place that he will choose to make his name dwell there, you shall do what? You shall eat the tithe of your grain, of your wine, of your oil, and of the firstborn of your herd and flock, that you may learn to fear Yahuwah your Elohim always. Deuteronomy 26:12. When you have finished paying all the tithe of your produce in the third year, as my brother said, which is the year of tithing, giving it to who? The sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow, so that they may eat within your towns and be filled. Now, like we said, they had to give these things to the Levites anyway, which would go into the temple. So even though they're saying for the sojourner, fatherless, and widow, it wasn't just for them to go and hand it out to them. Now, when they went to reap some of their fields, they're not supposed to reap all of their fields so that those same people can have something to eat. The corners, the edges of the field, they were supposed to leave those for those same people, minus the Levite. But when it comes to the tithe specifically, it still had to go through the proper channels. All right? So no, we do not tithe because all of those conditions are not in place. Does that mean, because a lot of people, I'm starting to realize, is like, well, then we shouldn't give. That's not what he's talking about. The tithe is strictly about the inheritance of the Levites. That belongs to them. Yes, you should still give. The entire text throughout the Torah talks about if your brother becomes poor, you're supposed to take care of him. You're supposed to do that. If they don't have a place to stay, you're supposed to open your door for them. So no, this isn't about, well, when we don't tithe, then now we can be selfish. That's not what it's about. There are laws telling you in the text what to do when your people are in dire situations, when they cannot provide for themselves. This is not a path to not give or to not help people. But the tithe, as we know it today, is not biblical. So we do not do that. Especially knowing that the tithe was for them to actually eat. It was agriculture. It was for them to actually eat and live off of. And we can't say they don't have money because I think it's in Deuteronomy 14. I I think it's that same chapter where it said, well, if the place is too far to bring your tithe to carry it, then you convert it for money. Then when you get to the location, then you still have to buy what you need to buy so that you can do what? Eat. Right. Right. So it's not about, oh, they didn't have money. Yes, they had money. Money existed at that time, but the tithe was to take care of those who did not have land. It wasn't for them to go shopping. What you got?
One of the things that I like to tell people is when you sit under a pastor who is neither a Levite,
he's not a Levite,
nor is he poor, nor is he the temple, no matter what they call it, the church, the temple, that is equal to taking money directly from the Most High. Because that was set aside to the Most High for these people.
Correct.
He said the first tenth, not the last tenth, not the middle tenth.
Yeah.
The first part is set apart to him. And here you have a human being with the gall to stand up there and say, give me what belongs to him. Very insulting.
That's correct. Yeah, they are not Levites, they're not priests. They are none of these things, right? So, for anyone who may watch this video later and you happen to be tithing in some institution, yo, that's not biblical. It's not biblical. I'm not saying don't give. Stuff needs to be supported. Like now that we're in this building, we're going to need help keeping the bills paid in here, right? When it comes to these family Shabbats that we're going to have when we're bringing all this food, we're going to need stuff. But we have never, and we will not ever say, hey, tithe, it's time to tithe. No, because it's not accurate, it's not biblical. All right? So, back to this. Rituals. That sounds, what does that sound like? When I say ritual, what comes to your mind? Something negative. It's a stigma associated with the term ritual. So when I said, do we do rituals, y'all looked at me. Y'all didn't want to say nothing because y'all didn't know where I was going with it. But y'all looked at me like, no, we don't do that. No, we don't. Because it's Western religion specifically has created this stigma in our minds so that when we see our brothers and sisters over there on the west coast of Africa or anywhere in Africa, but let's keep it within Israel, on the west coast of Africa, the Bantu region, when they see them doing certain things, it's called what? It's called witchcraft, it's called a ritual, it's called what? Voodoo, pagan. It's given these other terms that when you hear it, it creates this negative connotation in your head towards what it is that they're doing. But so, my sister asks, define ritual. Whenever you're confused, you don't really know, that's the best thing to do. Well, define what it is you're asking. If I say, do we used to do rituals? You don't really know? Ask, define it. What do you mean by rituals? And all thy getting, get what? A religious or solemn ceremony consisting of a series of actions performed according to a what?
Prescribed order.
Did we do rituals?
Yes, we still do.
Yes.
Meeting on Shabbat is a ritual.
Yeah, it's more of a tradition. But okay, religious. Here we go. Let's break down this real quick. We ain't religious. We don't have no religious. This is a culture, right? These buzzwords. Inside of a heritage, you have a culture. Encapsulated inside of that culture, you have what? You have a religion. The religion, to break it down in layman's terms, all the religion really is your belief in worship of a supernatural entity. And it doesn't even have to be supernatural. When you look at these definitions, they throw that out there, but it can be if it's an idol or something like that, and you're bowing to an idol. But that's really what it is how you worship this deity. Whatever it is that you believe, because even if it's an idol, some of them used to make sacrifices to their idol. So it's how you worship this deity. So that is encapsulated. We see that all through the Torah. Matter of fact, the first few chapters in Leviticus says what? It's about the sacrificial system. This is how we make atonement for our sins to our deity, right? To our power. So yes, there were rituals all throughout the text. Let's take a look at one. The law of jealousy. I love this one because this one, I've went over this before. This definitely looks strange if you was to see someone doing this. I'm not going to lie to you. Are y'all familiar with this one? In layman's terms, can you explain what it is?
If a husband suspects that his wife has been cheating on him, they would go before the priest and she would drink this potion and declare whether or not she had done it, and if she was to take an oath that her thigh would rot and she would or like just dissolve basically if she was found guilty, and if not, then she was obviously not guilty.
She would have a son or have a child.
She would have a child. So we're not going to read all of it for the sake of time, but it's Numbers 5, 12 through 24. And it really goes on after that, but this is all I can fit on one slide. So I'm going to start at the red part, verse 16. And the priest shall bring her, keep in mind what a ritual, the definition of a ritual said. Let's go back to that real quick. A religious or solemn ceremony consisting of a series of actions performed according to a prescribed order. And the priest, anytime you hear of a priest, even if it's in another culture, there's always rituals that this priest does for those people. And the priest shall bring her near and set her before Yahuwah. And the priest shall take holy water in an earthenware vessel and take some of the dust off the floor of the tabernacle and put it into the water. And the priest shall set the woman before Yahuwah and unbind her hair and the woman's head, and place in her hands the grain offering of remembrance, which is the grain offering of jealousy. And in his hand the priest shall have the water of bitterness that brings the curse. Then the priest shall make her take an oath, saying, if no man has lain with you, and if you have not turned aside to uncleanness, while you were under your husband's authority, be free from this water of bitterness that brings the curse. But if you have gone astray, though you are under your husband's authority, and if you have defiled yourself and some other man other than your husband has lain with you, then let the priest make the woman take the oath of the curse and say to the woman, Yahuwah make you a curse and an oath among your people when Yahuwah makes your thigh fall away and your body swell. May this water that brings the curse pass into your bowels and make your womb swell and your thigh fall away. And the woman shall say amen and amen. And then if you keep reading, it goes on and it continues with the other portions of the ritual. So, well, I mean, it sounds like it, but no, I mean, if you live you're innocent. The Most High will protect you from it if I mean, but you drinking dirty water. Yeah. You are drinking dirty water.
Or you get stoned.
Or you die.
Yeah.
What you got?
I've heard it said, and I don't know if you've heard this, David, when he said his loins rot away, that's actually referring to venereal disease. Have you heard that?
I have not heard that. Has anyone else heard that? He said, David said that his loins rot away, that refers to venereal disease. I have not heard that. Has anyone else heard that?
So that's what this reminds me of when it says her thigh wasted.
Okay, now I haven't heard that. But so, here's one ritual. There's one ritual. But what did I say? These rituals can only be done where? In the land. Because what comes along with these rituals are the priests. They come along with these rituals. So these, when you're looking through the text and you're examining what you should and should not do, when you see a ritual, because the priests are associated with that ritual, you know, this is not something I can't do. I can't do this. Okay? Here's another ritual. Aaron shall offer the bull as a sin offering for himself and shall make atonement for himself and for his house. Then he shall take two goats and set them before Yahuwah at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And Aaron should cast lots over the two goats, one lot for Yahuwah, the other lot for Azazel. And Aaron shall present the goat on the lot on which the lot fell for Yahuwah, and use it as a sin offering. But the goat which the lot fell for Azazel shall be presented alive before Yahuwah to make atonement over it, that they may be sent away into the wilderness with Azazel. Has anyone ever heard of Azazel?
Yes.
He said he threw his hand up so quick. That's my man's right there. How many of y'all heard of Azazel? Very, very interesting character. Very interesting character. Y'all should look that up when y'all get a chance. Okay. I have the Hebrew here because I just wanted to point something out. It says, when you come into the land, we know that sometimes the English translations don't always do the best job of translating the text. Yes, I am an advocate of learning Hebrew. Does that mean you won't make it to the kingdom? No, it does not. But it does help you better understand the culture specifically. And you can translate stuff yourself and figure out and determine what it says. It says Leviticus 19, 23 through 25, when you come into the land, now it says in English, the land. Is that any land? Is that America?
No.
Are we sure? How can we confirm that? When you come into America, when you come into the land, and you plant any kind of tree for food, then you shall regard this fruit as forbidden. 3 years it shall be forbidden to you. So who has a farm here? You grow. You said what?
It's haaretz, the word in red.
Yes, I didn't get there yet, but yes, you are correct.
Yes.
She said it's that last word in red. Is anyone who's been learning Hebrew, can you read that word? She just said it. Say it again. Haaretz. Haaretz. And what does that mean?
It's a definite article.
She said it's a definite article. What's the definite article?
Ha, which means the, so it's the land, not a land.
It means the land, not a land. So that's why I put that up there. Because we've been learning about the definite articles and what that means, right? So, ha, definite article, the, aretz, land. So this is a specific land. That's just put that up there, A, because we've been learning about the definite article, and B, you can fact check this for yourself when you look at the text. So when you come into the land and plant any kind of food or any kind of tree for food, then you should regard its fruit as forbidden. 3 years it shall be forbidden to you, it must not be eaten. And in the 4th year, all of its fruit shall be holy, an offering of praise to Yahuwah. But in the 5th year, you may eat of its fruit to increase its yield for you. I am Yahuwah your Elohim. So, anyone in here has a farm or they grow food? Okay, you got a farm? You grow food? He said, not really. Okay. You do. Anybody else? So does anyone who grow food in here let their land rest? You do. Why?
Because you don't want to use all the nutrients in the land, and it was scripturally sound, and I know it said the land, and I didn't know if that should apply. But it's a healthy thing to do.
You're absolutely 100% correct. It is a healthy thing to do. When we went over that lesson, form over function, or function over form, we talked about this. It is absolutely a healthy thing to do for your land. But if you are not in the land, this is why we have Hebrew farmers who do not allow their land to rest, because this does not apply to here. This applies to that land that the Most High owns over halfway across the world. It does not apply to this specific land. So if you were to have a farm, so it's good that you do that, right? It is very healthy for your soil, but it's not pertaining to us here.
So that's why you have things like the Dust Bowl that happen here, because people don't.
Because you don't let the land rest. That is correct. Yeah.
In Israel, you know what they do on the 7th year instead of letting the land rest for the 50th year? They lease it it out to people who are not Israeli so that they can farm the land.
They got a loophole.
Yeah,
They found a loophole.
So they lease
I didn't know that.
Russian companies come in and farm the land for the year that they're not supposed to farm it. So the land still doesn't get the rest.
He said what the Israelis do is on the seventh year, they will hire someone who's not of their people so that they can work the land. So that
they're not really hiring them, they're leasing it out.
They said they're leasing them out. So they're trying to use a loophole. So yes, the land is not resting. Right. But yes, so if you have a farm here, you grow food here, you do not have to let your land rest, because this commandment and these other commandments that talk about the Sabbath rest for the land is specifically for that land over there. All right? Make sense? I don't think I need to go over that again. Clean and unclean. You are to distinguish between the holy and the common, and between the unclean and the clean. Biblically speaking, what are some things that would make you unclean?
Touching a dead body.
You said what? He said periods. He just went straight for the... No holds bars. Periods. No sentence. Let's go. You said what?
Touching a dead body.
Touching a dead body.
Cannibalism?
He said cannibalism. She said having a child. Said what? She said some diseases. A nocturnal emission.
Eating swine.
Eating swine. He said discharge. All good answers. He says drinking blood. Pigs. Good job, Zion. Good job. Pigs. What can make you unclean? Here are some. This isn't an exhaustive list. This isn't everything. Here are some things that can make you unclean. Matter of fact, let me back up a little bit. So, what you got? He said if y'all put something on your heart and you doesn't go for that. Let me ask y'all this. When it comes to unclean, let's see how much we know these laws. What is the amount of time for a period or menstrual? 7 days, okay. What is the time for touching a dead body? I heard to the evening, 1 day. I heard 12 hours. A week, what's a week? 7 days, okay. Yes, it's 7 days. It's 7 days. What about a nocturnal emission? To evening, he said. I can't hear you.
What is a nocturnal emission?
When a man releases semen.
In his sleep.
Yes, you do. All of these you have. All of these you have to wash. That's correct. All of these you have to wash. You would never not be clean again if you don't wash. That's actually a ritual in itself, to wash yourself by evening, then you're clean. It's not as in-depth as the other one, but still a little ritualistic. I just asked you guys. You're just trying to laugh again, huh? Okay, ask your dad later.
When you're 18.
Okay, so here we go. Here goes some of these. I put little initials and stuff like that. So leprosy is TBD, to be determined. Your leprosy can last for a long time. If you're healed of leprosy, then there's, you have to go to the priest, do whatever the ritual is, so that they can pronounce you clean or unclean. Emission of semen, UE, until evening. Menstrual, 7 days. Touching the carcass of a dead animal, until evening. Touching a dead body, 7 days. Eating prohibited foods, until evening. Going into a tent where someone died, 7 days. Touching something touched by an unclean person, until evening. Childbirth, 40 days for who? 80 days for who? Anybody discharged that is unnatural, as she said, as diseases and stuff like that, and carrying the ashes of the red heifer, and like I say, it goes on. But
Moreh.
so
It's kind of silly, but I really want to know.
Okay.
A runny nose.
No.
That's unnatural.
Yes, but there's nothing in the text or in the Near Eastern literature that would say that that's something that they were referring to. So, it's actually not a bad question. It is a discharge, but there's nothing within the Hebrew, within the text, or within the Near Eastern culture that says that.
A lot of those other ones were like infection.
Yes,
Blood.
correct,
Blood.
correct. So if you had something wrong with you and you bled out of places you're not supposed to bleed from, like let's say you had an intestinal issue, and you bleeding from your bowels. Yeah, we got kids, so I'm trying not to make them laugh and distract everybody. But if you have some discharge, then you are unclean. If there's some type of sickness, an infection that you're discharging from certain areas of your body, you are unclean. No. Actually, yes and no, but we're going to get to that. That's my whole purpose of going into this. So, where were the unclean people supposed to go?
Outside the camp.
Outside the camp. What do y'all think that looks like? Because in the text it doesn't really say anything, it just says outside the camp. So do they just, go sleep on the ground somewhere? What do y'all think that looks like?
Build a tent.
Say build a tent?
Tents are places where specifically go on the outside of where the actual camps and they kept all where the people would normally land.
Okay, say that again.
So maybe they were outside of the camp, meaning, outside of where the normal people were sleeping. They probably had some set up to where they weren't just sleeping on the ground. They probably had some type of storehouse or some place where they knew that this is where unclean people go.
Do y'all agree with that? Disagree? Agree? Agree? He said a very good thought.
My only issue would be as far as the women. I haven't been able to confirm that they're left outside.
Every unclean person had to go outside the camp.
So even if they had a baby or breastfeeding or something like that.
Every unclean person had to go outside the camp. Every unclean person had to go outside the camp, without exception. Because if you are unclean, think about, let's look at it from a spiritual concept, right? Sin is a form of what? Uncleanness. If you are hanging around someone who lives a sinful lifestyle, do you think that it could potentially rub off on you? Bad company corrupts good character. That's in the text, right? So if you, from a spiritual standpoint, if you're hanging around someone who is sinful, unclean, then that same type of sins can eventually rub off on you if you stay around them long enough. And take it back to what this is. So if he's saying the reason actually, I'm about to get ahead of myself. We're gonna keep going. We're gonna address that. Let me not get ahead of myself. So Leviticus 8:11, 4 through 8. Nevertheless, among those that chew the cud, wrong slide. Where the unclean people are supposed to go. Numbers 5, 1 through 4. Yahuwah spoke to Moses saying, command the people of Israel that they put out of the camp everyone who is leprous or has a discharge, and everyone who is unclean through contact with the dead, and you shall put out both male and female, putting them outside the camp, that they may not defile their camp in the midst of which I, Yahuwah, in the midst of which I dwell. And the people of Israel did so, and they put them outside the camp. And Yahuwah said to Moses, so the people of Israel did. So, by their presence being in the camp, they are defiling the camp if they stay inside of the camp. Go ahead.
I'll catch you later, Moreh.
You said what?
I'll catch you later.
Okay. Deuteronomy 23, 9 through 12. When you are encamped against your enemies, you shall keep yourself from every evil thing. If any man among you becomes unclean because of a nocturnal emission, then he shall go outside the camp. He shall not come inside the camp, but when evening comes, he shall bathe himself in water, and as the sun sets, he may come inside the camp. You shall have a place outside the camp, and you should go to it. What was the danger when people became unclean? We know they could defile the camp, but what was the real danger for them? Who? You will drop dead. Leviticus 15. Thus you shall keep the people of Israel separate from their uncleanness, lest they die in their uncleanness by defiling my tabernacle that is in their midst. So you can't walk around unclean in that area where their tabernacle was, knowing that you could potentially die if you go up in there. So now the question becomes, can you transfer uncleanness? That's where it really happens, because if it's just a woman who has a cycle and she is unclean, then why should she have to go out if she cannot transfer her uncleanness to another person? Your hands right?
Yeah, I have a question. So when Eli's sons, who were, in charge of the tabernacle, is that because they were with prostitutes and doing whatever they want? Were they considered, well, of course eventually they died.
Mm-hmm.
Is that considered unclean as well?
Do you recall what they did?
Yeah, they were seen with prostitutes, like outside.
So hold that thought. We're going to get to that.
Moreh, could we maybe at a future date do more study on what the setup of the camp was, or what it looked like, and what was considered outside the camp? Because we know that the Most High dwelled. It said in the tabernacle there was a place in the inner circle where he was.
That is correct.
So, and there was a place where if you couldn't pass even to bring your offerings.
That is correct.
So for all these women who are for 80 days with newborns, and just there's got to be a place of protection, because typically when I think outside the camp, I'm thinking outside, so the walls, the protection, there's nobody out there, and we know that he didn't do that for us. So could we look and see so that we can adjust our minds that outside the camp is not outside out, right? It's not in the wilderness.
Now here's one thing. And that's an excellent question. Here's the thing. So you have a tabernacle inside. However the camp is set up, you have a tabernacle in the middle. Every time they didn't have a wall. They didn't always have a wall. The wall didn't always exist. There's nothing in the text that says that there was no one to protect them. It says outside the camp. I've heard this argument before. It seems as though we're looking at it from the standpoint, I mean, it's very good, but once again, there's no one saying that, okay, if the tabernacle is here, if you go into this third area, you will die. If you're within the midst of everyone else, you can transfer your uncleanness. That's what we're about to get into. You can transfer your uncleanness. So you can't be in the midst of everyone else. Whether or not how we feel about it it really doesn't matter, because if cleanness can transfer, you can't be in the midst of everyone else. So there had to be a place, whether you have a tabernacle and you have a little radius. Now, I'm not saying this is what it looked like, I'm just giving an example. When you had a radius, there had to be somewhere to where the people had to go. And I have looked into this. And there's no conclusive explanation on what it looks like, other than there was a place that they had to go. But the text does not say that they were unprotected, that there were no men who were supposed to be there, because guess what? When the men were unclean, they had to go there as well. So there's nothing said that there was no one to keep watch, that there was no one to keep guard. They just said that this is where the unclean people had to go. But there were always people, men and women, who was always going to be unclean. So they were not going to be at these places necessarily alone. But once again, we don't know what this place looks like. I have researched this because I was very curious of what it looks like. Because sometimes when someone does something that they're not supposed to do, they say place them outside the camp. What does that look like? In that situation, it's a punishment. So is it the same thing? I don't believe it is, but I can't teach that it is or isn't, because I haven't found enough substantial evidence to say that it is or isn't. However, we do know from the text, from what the text tells us about uncleanness, that they could not be in the midst of everyone else. So they had to be separated, man and woman, because then you would get everyone else unclean. And it wasn't just you sit on something that someone sit on, it was transferable. If you touch them, if you sit on something that they sat on, and even if your discharge didn't get on it, so you had to be separated. There was no other way for the camp to stay clean. It wasn't, you had to touch their blood, or you had to touch the dead body that they, no. You touched them and they became unclean. So you had to. And I know we can, and not saying that you're getting emotional, but I know we can get into a state of emotion where it's like, this doesn't seem right. It doesn't sound like this is something the Most High would do. But if you think about the Most High being holy and he can't have any uncleanness around him, we have to put our feelings to the side. And even though we may not understand what the actual structure looked like, we can understand that this is not somewhere that this was somewhere that we had to be, because we could not be in the midst of the Most High unclean. The text doesn't say. He said, what if someone is unclean and they do something that makes them unclean again? Now, I guess the text doesn't give that specific example. I guess if you want to, in a implicit way, say, well, if the person is unclean from an emission, but if they end up touching the dead body, then you would be unclean for 7 days from that time you touch the dead body. So I guess you look at it from that perspective, but the text does not give a specific example, but I think that makes sense.
No, I love the way you put it, that it was for our protection. It wasn't always punitive.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't always being punished. So, for example, if a man, like a woman just had a child, that man would go, he may want to be with that woman outside, and they would stay outside the camp until that period of uncleanness had passed. But he made that choice to cover and to be out there with her. Like, I suppose that I would want to be there with my wife as well, and I'm not looking at that as I'm being punished, versus this could save my life and maintain the cleanliness of the camp.
That's an excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up, because yes, it doesn't say that a man cannot go with the woman either. Because there are situations, and I have a scripture in here, where you can make yourself unclean for someone else. Priests could even make Levites could even make themselves unclean for certain people, for immediate family and stuff like that. So once again, it doesn't. There's things that it does not say when it talks about outside the camp for uncleanness. So let's not let our minds go to a place where that just doesn't feel right, because there's so much more being left out of the scenario. Like you said, a woman unclean for 80 days, there's nothing saying that the man cannot go do that either. He just can't do anything else as far as the tabernacle or being in the camp while he's unclean. But he's not unclean for 80 days or 40 days. He's unclean until evening. So he can go, come back. And and as long as he allows himself to become clean before he go back into the camp, he doesn't have to do the same thing that the woman would have to do in that particular situation. You have your hand raised?
I was going to say the same thing.
Oh.
Just to put it into perspective that depending on if it's unclean until evening, he may not have to be there for that.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so can you transfer your uncleanness to someone else? I used to have a lot of questions about this. When I first came to the walk, I used to have a lot of questions about this. Haggai 2:10-14. On the 24th day of the 9th month, in the 2nd year of Darius, the word of Yahuwah came to Haggai the prophet. Thus says Yahuwah of hosts, ask the priest about the law. If someone carries holy meat in the fold of his garment and touches his fold, bread or stew or wine or oil or any kind of food, does it become holy? So if he's carrying holy food and it touches something else, does the thing that touches it become holy? They answered and said, the priest answered and said, no. Then Haggai said, if someone who is unclean by contact with a dead body touches any of these things, does it become unclean? The priest answered and said, it does become unclean. Then Haggai answered and said, so is it with the people and with this nation before me, declares Yahuwah, and so with every work of their hands and what they offer, there is unclean. So, if someone who is unclean, just to make sure we drive this point home, if someone who is unclean touches something that is unclean, that item becomes unclean. And if you touch that item, you become unclean, and so forth and so on. It is transferable. So I asked all of that to get to this point. Can we keep the unclean laws in this land? Says some of them. He said never. Do y'all know if y'all are clean or unclean right now? When you go to work, do you know if you're clean or unclean?
Most likely unclean.
You say what?
What you're touching and who touched it before you touched it.
It's easier to remain clean coming here because it's the weekend. You're a little more isolated than it is in your day-to-day life when you're going here and there to and fro to the grocery store. We live in a place that is unclean. That is, we don't have the autonomy. We don't have the regulation over whether or not people can do whatever they want to do when they're unclean. We got people who walk around free bleeding because they're trying to prove a point. Free bleeding. That's okay.
When a tool or vessel becomes unclean, I'm not talking about like a human body or anything. When something that you use, if it becomes unclean, was there something that you have to do to make that particular item clean again?
Depends on the item. Some of them you have to break. You have to break and get rid of it. It's done. Some of them you have to cleanse, but some of them you have to break.
So part of the Nada law is you can't sit on a chair that a woman who is on a period sat on. There's no way in the world you can tell me you know who sat on that chair.
That is correct. That is correct. That's my point.
Yeah.
That's absolutely correct. He said part of the Nida, which is the menstrual, part of that law is you're not supposed to sit in the chair that someone who was on their menstrual sat in. And he said there's no way for you to know if someone who was on their menstrual sat in it. Because in this land, they don't follow Torah. Right? You have your hands raised.
Yeah, okay, we talking about blood and all that stuff like that. I'm a common topic.
Okay.
I'm primarily cut. I use a razor a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I have to pull hair, bumps and all that stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Blood and you know what I'm saying? So in terms of you talking about what you're using becoming unclean. I'm not using the same razor, I use different razors. I got gloves on that protect me. But the thing is the glove touching the stuff. Like you're saying, you know, that'll make me unclean.
Yeah, if it's just your garment that touches it, and we're gonna use gloves as a garment in this situation. If it's just your garment, you still are. They call it what's the term? The term that when you research this stuff, they call it ritually unclean. Right? While you may not physically touch it to where you can get something from it, in this sense, ritually speaking, you are unclean. So I asked this question, once again, we're trying to figure out if we can keep these laws. Being unclean in this nation is something that probably happens to us far more than we ever know. Because we go into their grocery stores, we go into their workplaces. I go into people's homes. I'm a technician, so I go into people's homes to install their alarm systems. I'm shaking hands. I don't know. But you say, so what do we do? There's not much you can do. There's not much you can do. Why do I bring this up then if there's nothing that you can do? Because I want to distinguish between two types of being unclean. This is why when he asked the question, one of them asked the question earlier about if you do something, do you become unclean? And I said yes and no. Because all uncleanness is not created equal. Do you think, or not even think, according to the text, when the land was defiled and they made it unclean, was it unclean because of natural circumstances? He told you to be fruitful and multiply, and every time you multiply, you unclean. Every time you attempt to multiply, you become unclean. He tells you to do this. Do you think that the land was defiled because of these natural circumstances? So what would cause the land to be defiled? He says, shedding innocent blood. Breaking laws. When we look through the text, you can see it. You can create a tone on how the Most High feels and looks at certain things. It's not all the same. If a man has an emission of semen, when a woman has a discharge, it says when because that's natural for a woman. Whatever the unclean person touches shall be see, here you go again. And whatever the unclean person touches shall be unclean. And anyone who touches it shall be unclean until evening. Speak to the people of Israel, saying, if a woman conceives and bears a child, then she shall be unclean 7 days, and at the time of her menstruation, she is unclean, and then it goes on to the remainder of the time. It's completely different. These are natural occurrences, things that you cannot avoid, versus disobedience. That makes you unclean. Remember I said, spiritually speaking, if you sin is a form of uncleanness, spiritually speaking. This is the type of uncleanness that we have to stay away from. This is breaking the law, statutes, and commandments. You should not approach a woman to uncover her nakedness while she is in her menstrual uncleanness. And you should not lie sexually with your neighbor's wife and so to make yourself what? That's adultery. Adultery makes you what? Unclean. You should not give any of your children to offer to Moreh. So to profane the name of your God, I am Yahuwah, You should not lie with a male as with a woman is an abomination. And you should not lie with any animal and so make yourself what? Do not make yourselves what? By any of these things. For by all these, the nations I'm driving out before you have become unclean. And I'm just going to read this last part in the blue. This is Leviticus 18, 19 through 30. Never to make yourselves unclean by these things. So while it's not weighted the same. While it is natural uncleanness that we will all encounter, especially here, that we can't do much about. All praises to the Most High for Yahushua HaMashiach, right? But there are uncleanness, things that brings upon uncleanness that you can avoid. You cannot sleep with somebody else's wife. You cannot, what else we got? Lie with an animal. Please. Don't come back if you decide to do that. But that was a little on the weird side. But no, but seriously speaking, the land was made unclean because of their sins, not because of the other matters of uncleanness. So while we cannot avoid becoming unclean in this nation, and a lot of the times we won't even know when we're unclean. Continue to live your life for the Most High, knowing that there's some things you just can't avoid. Some things you can. And deliberately sinning is one of them. Behold, the princes of Israel and you, everyone according to his power, have been bent on shedding blood. Father and mother are treated with contempt in you. The sojourners suffer extortion in your midst. The fatherless and widow are wronged in you. You have despised my holy things and profaned my Sabbaths. All of these things are sins. There are men in you who slander to shed blood. And you men uncover their father's nakedness. And they violate women who are unclean in their menstrual impurity. One commits abominations with his neighbor's wife. Another lewdly defiles his daughter-in-law. Another in you violates his sister. Just goes on and on and on and on. And he said, I will consume your what? This is the type of stuff we have to stay away from. The other sin, the other uncleanness. So, does that mean that you can eat swine? No. Why? Because what? He said because there's a law against it. He's literally telling you, do not do this. Not if, there's some sentences that says if, but he's specifically saying, do not eat this. This is unclean to you. So it does not give you a pass. Ezekiel 36:17, the Son of Man, when the house of Israel lived in their own land, they defiled it by the way, they defiled it what? By the way of their deeds. Their ways before me was like what? Their deeds, their actions defiled the land. And it was like that. It was like uncleanness. Last one. I'm going to read the red. Learn to do as they did. They served idols. When they became a snare to them, they sacrificed their sons and their daughters to the demons and poured out innocent blood, and the blood of their sons and daughters whom sacrificed to the idols of Canaan, they became unclean by their acts. So last thing on uncleanness. Sin causes you to be unclean. Disobedience to the Torah will cause you to be unclean. Any theology that teaches something from the text that is a sin, and then later tells you it's not a sin and you can do it, is a terrible theology. Yah is not the author of confusion. That way that the way that you atone for your sin may be different. That's the thing. The way you may atone for your sin is different. But the sin is still a sin. All right. Do we have any questions about uncleanness before we move on?
Not necessarily for uncleanness, but the Torah, I believe someone spoke this to me in my understanding. There was 600 laws in the old.
613. Yeah. We went over that before. I don't subscribe to 613 laws because if you repeat something to me, you're saying the same thing over. It's not a different law. A lot of the laws are repeated, and I think it was maybe the first lesson that we did on this. And when you go into Deuteronomy, Moshe is giving them a full-scale recap of everything that happened, and he goes literally back into the 10 Commandments. It's the same commandments that was given at Sinai. And then he goes on. Deuteronomy is a recap of the laws. This is why a lot of them are repeated in Deuteronomy. So I do not subscribe to that. I am familiar with that. Yeah, that's what a lot of people say. It's 613 laws, but it's not as many. When we look at how many laws that we're actually responsible to keep here in this land, it's not a lot. It's not that many laws that we're supposed to keep here in this land. It's exaggerated. In the land over there will be more, but it still would not equate to each person having to keep 613. And if you break it down numerically, I don't subscribe to 613 laws because they're saying the same thing a lot of the times. Does that answer? That make sense? All right. Okay. I don't think we need to spend much time on this. Are we supposed to eat blood? All right. That's the law that we still can keep, right? I hope you're not eating scabs. Man, you eat scabs? Let's make sure we're not eating scabs, y'all. Let's make sure we're not doing that. So yeah, I don't need to stay on this. We are not to eat blood. Good. So we're all on the same page there. So what about them rare steaks that people like to eat? Can y'all eat that? No. Okay. We're all on the same page there, right? If we go out to eat, and I see you get one of them mid boys, and I look at you like, don't look at me like something wrong with me. No, something wrong with you. What you got, brother?
So
don't tell me you eat rare steaks. Are you good?
I had something for breakfast this morning. I'm sorry. When he said, but listen, when he said don't eat blood, was he not talking about the practice? Like with the children of Israel when they prayed for meat and the quail came and they were popping the heads off and sucking them out. Was he not talking about a religious practice as opposed to you cook a steak and there's a little bit of, because it's really not blood, it's really interstitial fluid. So
let me ask you this. Do you eat food that has a little bit of swine in it?
No, under no circumstances.
Would you eat a burger that has a little bit of blood in it?
Yes.
Why?
Here's why. Because when the Passover was given originally, what did they say? Cook it in haste, eat it in haste. Do you really think they had time to turn it upside down or soak it in salt water?
I do.
And draw the blood out? I don't think they
do. Because that's against the essence of the Most High. Now, cook it in haste does not mean don't cook your food all the way. It doesn't mean that. That's why the bread was unleavened, right? That is why the bread is unleavened. They're not eating no blood. Yes, now, going back to what you said, that is a practice of the nations around them was eating blood. Like when you get to Acts 15 and they go through the Jerusalem Council and they talk about what they shouldn't eat. Yes, they mentioned blood. All of those things actually are practices that the nations around them would do, but you are not supposed to consume blood. Just like if you were to get touched by blood, would you become unclean? So if you have a burger that just has a little bit of blood in there, then what are you now? And now you're doing something that he specifically told you not to do. And that's something that you can avoid. It's not something that's accidental, that you didn't know. I mean, unless you asked for a well done and they gave you a rare, I think you would know it's rare. But if you bite it and you're like, oh, it's like, no, you not, bro. We got vampires. But no, if a little blood can make you unclean, then if you eat a little blood, you're breaking that commandment.
So the reason why I say that is because when you look at the tradition of kosher now, the kosher practices like salt and meat were put an animal to death and threw it up on a altar. We can debate as to how long they cooked it or whether it was well done or rare. I don't know if anybody here has actually cooked an entire animal. But when you throw like a whole lamb or an entire goat up on something, you be cooking the living daylights out of that thing to get it rare done on the inside. Really. It takes a considerable amount of time. Not saying that they didn't do that, but it's not as simple as, you know, you throw a fillet of steak inside the oven and cook it until it's not ready. Yeah.
What you got?
I was just going to say, specifically, Pastor, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's why men have certain time frames to go out to pick out the lamb and all this, to be able to slaughter it properly, to do so before they even had time to cook it. So it was time frames for them.
Right.
So they make sure it was done.
It wasn't just grab a lamb, kill it, and cook it, and let's go. There was still a procedure to follow. You had your hand raised?
Yeah, I wanted to get back. One of the laws about Passover is not to eat of it raw or sodden with water.
Hallelujah.
So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Right.
Iron sharpen iron. Okay, so we don't eat blood. Mixed garments. What kind of shirt you got on? He said Polly and Esther. Let me catch one of y'all here with some mixed garments. I'm going to bring you up to the front of the congregation and embarrass you. I'm just playing on that. Mixed garments. Can we wear mixed garments here? Is this a law that we keep and we don't keep? What you got? Okay.
Does it mean that one piece of, so if I have on a blouse, that needs to be 100% of one fabric, or can I have on a silk scarf and a cotton blouse? Or does my whole outfit have to be cotton?
Okay, she said if she has on a silk blouse, silk scarf, cotton blouse, is that breaking that commandment? No. Good question, good question. A very practical question, you know. How do you walk this stuff up? No, that is not breaking it. See, I remember when I teach stuff, and I remember specific people who give specific feedback. I'm looking at you, Donna, because I remember your answer the last time we talked about mixed garments. So I will be calling on you specifically in just a moment. All right? So, mixed garments. What does it say? Leviticus 19:19. You shall keep my statutes. You should not let your livestock breed with another kind. You should not sow your field with mixed seed, nor shall a garment of mixed linen and wool come upon you. Deuteronomy 22:11. You should not wear a garment of different sorts, such as wool and linen mixed together. Now, depending on your translation, it may not say wool and linen mixed together. It may just say of mixed fabric. It may just say something, generic. This is also why I've said over and over, and I'll say it again, make sure that we're not slaves to a translation, that we're always checking multiple translations to see what else is being conveyed, and even go to the Hebrew, if you know how to do that. So according to this translation, which my translation of choice that I always start off with before I go to a different one, because I still compare, is the ESV. And so in the ESV, it says, you should not wear a garment of mixed linen and wool. And then Deuteronomy says wool and linen. So what does that mean? Can anybody pronounce that word? So somebody want to give a shot at it?
Sha'atnes.
Good job. Good job. Sha'atnes. Sha'atnes. And you see this KJV translates garments of diverse sorts, so you may see that in some of the text. But what is it saying? It's saying literally Lindsay Woolsey. Do y'all know what that is? I had to look that up. I've never heard of that. This command is very specific. So as my brother said, Polly and Esther.
No,
The command is a very practical and functional command. It is made by weaving linen and wool together. So if you have on, according to this definition here, that's telling you linen and wool, if you have on silk and cotton, one being a blouse and the other being a scarf, you can answer your own question. Do you think that will break that command? Okay. So, practically speaking, all right, Donna, you got some feedback for me? Do you remember this? Okay.
So the meaning was that the reason you didn't mix the two was because each fabric was for a particular season or weather. So the linen was for the hotter months, hotter season, and the wool for the cooler period of time.
She said each fabric was for a particular season or whether wool is for what season?
Cooler.
And linen is for what?
Warmer months.
She's absolutely correct. So the physical significance, we're almost done. Pagan priests were known to have worn certain types of garment made of vegetable, flax and linen, and animal, sheep / wool materials. This could have been the main reason for this prohibition. As the Maimonides, the prominent Jewish philosopher and scholar, wrote in Moreh 3:37, the heathen priests adorned themselves with garments containing vegetable and animal materials, while they held in their hand a seal of mineral. This you will find written in their books, and from a practical perspective, from a hygienic point of view, wool and linen have opposing characteristics. Wool has an absorbing and shrinking nature and retains heat, while linen is resistant, non-shrinkable, and a good conductor of heat. Woolen clothes are naturally worn to keep oneself warm, while linen is worn to keep oneself cool. So, from a practical standpoint, you should not wear these garments. This is why he gave the command. From a practical, functional standpoint, does it still apply? Was there anything in that text saying that it applied to the land? Was there any priest associated with it? Was there a ritual associated with it? Was inheritance associated with it? Should we keep this law? We should keep it, but understand that what it's saying is not any fabric. When it was written, it was specifically talking about the cultural context of linen and wool. That is the cultural context of what's being said.
I gotta tell you this funny story. When I first came into the walk, and I thought that the prayer shawl was like the thing that you put over your head and everything with the tassels on it. One of my coworkers said, I got this prayer shawl from the Archbishop, so I'm thinking it's gonna look something like what I got.
Okay.
She took out this thing that looked like 1,000 rats had been sacrificed. It was gray and linen and wool. I mean, it's just this hodgepodge, and I touched it, I was like, thing feels alive. She's like, yeah, it's been blessed by the Archbishop. I'm thinking, what kind of sick person would even make something look like this? That's what you're talking about. I'm serious.
Did you say 1,000 rats?
That's what it looked like, dude. It looked ridiculous. And it looked like a lot of different types of fabric woven together. So it was kind of like a quilt, but not like a quilt. It just looked like a hodgepodge of different types of material woven together. I've never seen anything that ugly before in my entire life. It took me back so bad, but now I'm looking at this like a lot of the Catholic traditions, a lot of the first day church traditions come straight out of paganism. I'm looking at this like, why would you call this a prayer cloth? And now it makes sense because I had no idea that they used to do that. That's part of the tradition. Yeah.
Head coverings. Are women commanded to wear head coverings?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes.
You said yes.
Yes.
He said prayer and prophesying. Okay, so let me ask you this question. Where in the Torah is it commanded for men to cover their head? Let's go with the men first. Are men commanded to cover their head?
Yes.
At certain times.
Certain times when they pray.
Now I was going to say, like, you know, like the priests would wear like certain stuff in the temple. So I'm just saying at certain times, then they would cover their head.
Bingo. The priests were commanded to cover their head. They were. Exodus 28:4. These are the garments that they shall make: a breastplate, an ephod, a robe, a coat of checker work, a turban. Some translations may say bonnet, it's a turban, and a sash. They shall make holy garments for Aaron, your brother, and his sons to serve me as priests. Exodus 28:40. For Aaron's son you shall make coats and sashes and caps. You shall make them for glory and beauty. The priests were commanded to cover their heads. These are the words behind it, and this is for Exodus 28:40, turban, headgear, and the other one, turban. So, men were commanded to, have y'all heard that before? That there was a command to cover your head. I've only heard people say it about the women. No one says anything about men supposed to cover their head. Now, I have something on my head. Am I allowed to wear this? Why am I allowed to wear it? He says, I'm not a priest functioning in the role of a temple. There is no commandment that I have to or don't have to. That's why. That's why I can wear it. There is no commandment for the layman. And even as a Moreh, it's not commanded that you have to do this or you don't have to do this. All right. So, where in the Torah is the command for women to cover their head? You said Paul said that. Is it in the Torah? No. Is it in the Tanakh? It's not. Now, I love seeing women with their hair covered. I think it's a beautiful thing. Culturally speaking, I think it's a beautiful thing. But what does the text say? Because there are people who will make you feel bad if you don't have your hair covered. So what? You said what? She said your hair is your covering. One thing we have to keep in mind is that cultural context. For one, Paul cannot say something that contradicts Torah. He cannot. He does not have that authority to do so. Secondly, even in what he's saying, when you get to the last verse, I think it's verse 16, he says, if anyone be contentious, we have no such custom. It is a cultural thing. It is not a command for women to cover their head. It is a cultural thing for women to cover their head. We have one example in at least the Torah. I'm not sure about the Tanakh, but according to the Torah, we only have one example where a woman covered her head and it was not commanded to do so. Genesis 24:63 through 65. And Isaac went out to meditate in the field toward evening, and he lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, there were camels coming along, and Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she dismounted the camel, and said to the servant, who is that man walking in the field to meet us? The servant said, it is my master. So she took her veil and covered herself. Now, you have prostitutes who would completely cover themselves, right, so that you don't see anything. But there is no command for women to cover their head. I think you should. That's just my perspective. I think it's a great thing. But if you're asking me, what does the text say specifically? Would you be sinning if you didn't cover your head? The answer is no. That's the answer to that. That is not to discourage you. That's just what the text says. But I think you should continue to cover your head. But that's my opinion and my perspective. Y'all good?
And as the Moreh, like you can determine like house rules. This kind of like the direction that we're going in. What we would like to see, however, not commanded.
That's true. That's true. As long as I'm making people know that it's not a command. If that's the house rule, then it's the house rule. As long as I'm making people know that it's not a command and you are not sinning if you do this, then here's what it is. All right, this is the last topic. Last topic. As recent as yesterday, I saw somebody going hard at people who, it was a Hebrew man who was going hard at men who was getting lineups and their beard lined up. I'm just like, really? Like, so what does this mean? What does this mean? Leviticus 19, 27 through 28. And you shall not round off the hair on your temples or mar the edges of your beard. You should not make any cuts on your body for the dead or tattoo yourselves. I am Yahuwah. Leviticus 21:5. They shall not make bald patches on their heads, nor shave off the edges of their beards, nor make any cuts on their body. Deuteronomy 14:1. You are the sons of Yahuwah Elohim. You shall not cut yourselves or make any baldness on your foreheads for the dead. What was the reason people would cut themselves or make themselves bald?
It's a pagan practice that gives honor to it shows you're afflicting yourself.
He said it's a pagan practice that shows you're afflicting yourself. Anybody else got something they want to add to that? He said they not only would they afflict themselves, they would put pagan writings on themselves. Anybody else want to add something to this? Jeremiah 16:5-7. For thus says Yahuwah, do not enter the house of what? Or go to, or for them. For I have taken away my peace from this people. My steadfast love and mercy declares Yahuwah. Both great and small shall die in this land. They shall not be buried. And no one shall do what?
Lament for them or cut himself or make himself bald for them.
No one shall break bread for the mourner to comfort him for the dead. Nor shall anyone give him the cup of consolation to drink for his father or for his mother. Anybody want to take a stab at what these verses are about? Yeah, just look at the. It's about mourning. It's about mourning.
That sounds like a wake to me. You know, comforting someone with.
Yeah. Jeremiah 41:4-5. On the day after the murder of Gedaliah, before anyone knew it, 80 men arrived from Shechem and Shiloh and Samaria with their beards shaved and their clothes torn and their bodies what? That's cuts on your body, bringing grain offerings and incense to present at the temple of Yahuwah. Isaiah 22:12. And the day that Yahuwah, your Elohim of hosts, calls for weeping and mourning for what?
Baldness.
And wearing what?
Sackcloth.
What did they wear sackcloth for? All right. Amos 8:10. I will turn your feast into
mourning,
and all your songs into
lamentation.
I will bring
Sackcloth
on every waist, and
baldness.
I will make it like the mourning for an only son, and the end of it like a bitter day. Isaiah 15:2. He has gone up to the temple, and to Dibon, to the high places to weep over Nebo and Medeba. Moab wails, on every head is baldness, every beard is shorn. So, I read all those just to show you that this practice was a mourning practice. This does not have to do with a man just regular maintenance on himself. It has nothing to do with that. It is you are not to do these specific things for mourning. And even some of the scriptures tells you for the dead. You're not to make cuts on yourself for the dead.
Many poly
That is correct.
And so when you look at people who get tattoos with like people's names and the year they were born and the year they died, I'm like, you're coming dangerously close.
Mhm.
Knew exactly what they were doing. Another point, when you see people saying, I pour out a little drink for my homie, what is the difference between that and Baal worship where they poured out drink offerings to the dead? No difference at all. It's a slightly different context, but it's the exact same thing.
That's the difference, is the context.
Yeah.
Because our people, see, here's the thing about the scriptures. A lot of the things that we did, a lot of the cultures did.
Right.
It's just who you doing it for. Right? It's who you're doing it for. We did drink offerings.
Right.
We did them. Other cultures did them. They're not doing them for the Most High Elohim. When you look at, I think it's called Urim and Thummim.
Right. Yeah.
You know that's a form of divination if you're doing that outside of our culture.
Exactly.
But they were doing it for the Most High, so it was perfectly fine.
Or the brazen serpent.
Right, so when we look at these things, a lot of the stuff we do that's in our culture are practices that other cultures may do in some variation, but they're doing it to someone else, and they're doing it for someone else, right? So that's what makes it an abomination. You are not to do it for the reasons that they're doing these things. Now, that's for cuts on yourself, and for cutting your beard and stuff like that. You can get your beard lined up, you can trim your beard, you can do all of that stuff, right? But tattoos is mentioned one time in the scripture. It's mentioned nowhere else, but there is a lot of references to it outside of the scriptures. You go to Mesopotamia, you go to Egypt, you find out that what we know of as tattoos isn't the same as what they did per se. However, the term it's marks. It's marks on your skin. Egypt, they used to do it, especially the women, who they would call maybe, they think that they were possibly entertainers and stuff like that, used to get like lines and certain shapes, and sometimes even animals. Some of them used to get marks on themselves for their deity. So this is how they serve, and people used to get marks on themselves for if they were a slave. No, you should not get tattoos. If you already have a tattoo, that's not what I'm saying.
What if it's like a Hebrew word? What's the name of the Most High?
That's a very interesting perspective, because some people think that should be fine, because you're doing it for the Most High. He didn't tell us to. He said that he would mark us. He didn't say that we should mark ourselves. There are texts that says that he will mark us with the Tah. He put his insignia on us. Not that we go and do it ourselves. So while we do have the leeway to get our hair cut, you shouldn't be cutting yourselves for the dead. You shouldn't be cutting yourselves at all. I don't think I need to say that, but just in case. But biblically speaking, as far as tattoos, no, you should not be getting tattoos, because there is nothing in there that says this is specifically for the dead. And when you look at it, because there's no more examples in the text about tattoos, you have to look at outside cultures. And outside cultures did do these markings and these things for various reasons. For various reasons. I think it's something that we should not be doing, because we're not commanded to do so, and there's really no valid reason to do so. This is not saying if you got a tattoo, go remove it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying now that you know the truth, now that you know who you are in this covenant, moving forward, you should not get tattoos. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. That is my last slide. It's important that we figure out, as best as we can, how to walk this stuff out the right way. There are a lot of things that's not completely laid out in the text. There are a lot of things that's not completely laid out. We seek understanding. we study, we research. We do the best we can, and then the understanding that we come to, we move forward with, but always be open for edification. Always be open for correction. No one in here has always been right. No one. So let's make sure that we're trying and we're seeking things with our heart for the Most High and not looking for loopholes. Not looking for ways to get out of doing certain things that He told us to do or to do things that He told us not to do. There is more freedom in the Torah than people give it credit for. But there are some things that He just don't want us to do. So we should accept those things. As His children, when the parent tells their child not to do something, the child may want an explanation, and some parents will say, because I said so. And that should be enough. That should be enough. It's okay if we ask questions. It's okay if we ask questions. I encourage every one of you to ask questions of the Father. What's the purpose for this law? Why is this command given? He wants you to seek out understanding. But let's just make sure that we're not looking for reasons to not obey Him. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Let's go ahead and stand. After we're done with this prayer, I got a couple real quick things to say, and we all will be free to do whatever, congregate, fellowship, all of that. Most High Yah, we thank You for allowing us to gather together, for being amongst the presence of our brethren, for being able to walk in fellowship, to sharpen each other as iron does, as Your word says. Father, as we seek understanding, as we seek direction, we ask that You allow Your word to be a lamp to guide us. And we ask that You would direct us to the path that we should go. At the end of the day, Father, we want to be obedient, and sometimes we just don't understand. So, Father, we ask that You would impart it into our mind, that You would open our eyes, that You would send someone who can answer these questions for us. In any way that You see fit to convey the message of truth to Your people, Most High Yah, we ask that You do so. We ask that You forgive us for any iniquity that we may have committed and our ignorance, Father. And if anyone has committed sins here on purpose, with a high hand, Father, we ask that You remove the haughty spirit, that You will humble them, humble their spirits, so that they may also follow You in spirit and truth, and not neglect Your word, and not neglect You. Most High Yah, all we want is understanding. All we want is for You to say, well done, my good and faithful servant. We're seeking to please You, Most High. So on this journey, Father, lead our paths. Give us the spirit to follow You. In the name of Your Son, Yahushua HaMashiach, we repent for anything that we have done that has been out of order, that has been out of line with Your scriptures, Father. And we pray that any sins that we may be committing that You don't know, that You will shine a light on them so that we can see. So we can see our flaws, Father. So we can be made aware of these things so that we can repent from them and turn back to You. We worship You with our whole heart, our mind, our soul. We give it to You. In the name of your glorious Son, Yahushua HaMashiach, we pray. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.